This video is about my trip from Colombia and across the way to Panama and through the Panama Canal, from where I embarked on my trip across the Pacific. So I start out this video in Cartagena. I'd been to Cartagena once before. It's a very impressive city, very vibrant, lots of street life and music and all kinds of things to see. You can go along and visit the fruit stalls. There's a lot of really impressive architecture, and it's a really fun town to be in. As I said, I've been there once before, but this time I had a little bit of time, and I had my boat there. This is some street performers. There's a lot of things going on at night, and very entertaining. You can also walk around the city. It's actually a walled city, which means that it was fortified by the Spanish back in the colonial days, and so there's a gigantic wall that encloses the old town. And you can walk through the old town. There are a lot of very beautiful houses and architecture, very old doorways and so forth. But the real reason that I was there was to get to the Panama Canal. Now, Cartagena has a lot of sailboats that are there, and there's also some facilities. This is a guy that I met there, a very unusual person. He's from Portugal. He built this boat himself. There's actually nothing really inside it except for a garden. He had there was no motor on board, there was no kitchen, but he had lots and lots of plants. Some of them were growing up through the hatches and things, and he had built flower pots inside of it. He was a really unusual guy, very knowledgeable about sailing. You have to be in a boat without an engine. Now, while I was there, I visited the countryside. Colombia is a very beautiful place. I went up into a place called Zona Cafetera, which is where they grow a lot of the coffee. And there are some national parks there. This one is called Park de Cocora, Valley Cocora. And it has these beautiful wax palm trees where you can see them here. It's a really scenic area, pretty high in the mountains. Now, this area is known for growing coffee, and so I went and visited a finca, which is a coffee plantation. This is the owner of the finca who showed me some things. But the real reason that I was there was to get some work done on my boat, because I had to haul it out. So there was a facility for doing this, and you can see that you put straps around the bottom of the boat. The boat lift then it's on wheels, and it hoists the boat out of the water and transports it to a place where you can work on the bottom, paint it and such, which is what I did. I had to paint the bottom and do some other maintenance things. So here it is. My boat is called the Last Unicorn. It's not the name that I gave it, but you know, when I bought it, it had that name, and you know, I kind of get some flack about it sometimes, but I think it's a good name and I like it. So this is a guy that I actually met up in the coffee area, and he was the owner of a hostel, and he volunteered to come along with me to cross the isthmus, actually the Gulf of Darien. And we did that. We arrived at these islands called the San Blas Islands. There were only 2 boats there when we got there. One of them belonged to my friend who I had met in Cartagena. And these islands, really beautiful. They're inhabited by a group of people, Indian people called the Cunha. This is my friend's boat. This is my friend and his daughter, who I said I met in Colombia. We did take a trip to some of the little islands there. This is our dinghies hauled up, and I did some diving there. I went spearfishing. I got this one fish one day, and we barbecued it, had a really nice meal, and that was great. Now, the people, the Indians that live there are called the Cunha, and they basically were Colombian. They lived in Colombia, but they were driven out by the Spanish. And this is my friend. He's talking to the people, and this is my friend's boat. You can see the islands are very very nice, and hardly any people were living. Now this is a little bit more inhabited, this island, although it's very small. It's just people getting ready to transit the Panama Canal, basically. This giant ship went by, the sailing boat, and I took some pictures of it. So then I embarked on a trip up northerly towards towards one of the islands up there, and this is the area. It's this is Portobello, and this is an island that was very important during Spanish times as a fort, and so it was used to protect against pirates and so forth. Very scenic coastline, and you can see some of the coastline there. This is one of the forts that were built by the Spanish to guard against invaders and pirates. And so there's a lot of these colonial structures. These are places where cannon were kept, and this is the village of Portobello. Now, from Portobello, I embarked north towards the beginning of the Panama Canal in Colón, and a lot of really big ships go through here. It's also a place that the U.S. had a lot of military presence. But the main thing in this area, Colón, is the beginning of the Panama Canal. This is a very famous, one of the biggest engineering feats to ever have been undertaken, and it was started by the French actually in the 1800s, late 1800s. These are people that are getting ready to transit the canal now. What people generally do when they're sailing, they go on one trip, they volunteer as a line handler, because you have to have I think about 5 line handlers. So you go along, you volunteer, and then you get to experience going through the canal, and then you do it on your own. So you don't get paid, it's a volunteer position, but so here we are going through, and you can see that the canal was built originally to accommodate the largest ships of the day, which made it about 100 feet wide. Now, since I went through, they built an extension, a larger canal, but here are the locks. There are 3 sets of locks that go up, and 3 locks go down. And these locks are just amazing structures. They're hydraulically, water's pumped in and out, and then there are gigantic rams that basically open and close these enormous doors. So the doors are closed, the water is pumped out or pumped in, depending whether you're going up or down, and then the gates open, and then you go to the next level. Now, between these sets of locks, there's a lake, a man-made lake called Lake Gaston, and this is the highest point of the Panama Canal. Panama Canal is about 50 miles long, and it originally followed a railway route that went from the Gulf to the Pacific Ocean, and you can see there's a lot of containers that go through there. This is Lake Gaston, and this is the high point of the Panama Canal. I believe it's about 80 feet up. Now, this is a guy that I met on that first trip, because I went as a line handler, and he was actually a line handler also. His name is Bjorn. His real name is Bjorn, but I met him, and he asked me if I was going to French Polynesia, and I said, yeah. And so it turned out he went with me to French Polynesia, but I met him on this voyage. Now, this guy that you see here, he's the owner of the boat. I'm the line handler. Of course, you go at night as well. They have powerful lights, and you have these ropes that you basically, when they fill the canals, you haul in on the ropes and keep the boat stable. This is the end. This is that was the boat going in. Now, this is my own trip, and you can see the really large vessels. This is Lake Gaston again, and this is one of the locks, going through at night on my boat. And you know, it was really an amazing feeling to go down from the lake and to finally get to the Pacific Ocean, because you know that was the goal all along, was to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And if you don't go through the Panama Canal, you've got to go all the way around South America, and it's really a long, expensive trip. So I ended up in Panama City on the other end of the canal. That's my boat with a kayak on it. And yeah, I was very relieved because it was pretty stressful going through there. So I went out the first night, I got pizza, and I saw this on the way back, just getting onto the dinghy. It's a sloth, and the sloth was just hanging out and just kind of cruising along very slowly. But I knew I was in South America when I saw that. And so this is looking at Panama City. I'm just about getting ready to embark on my trip across the Pacific. So I took a few days, I provisioned, you know, I went out and bought the food for what I believe would be about a 40-day trip, because I was going to go non-stop. And so I just, you know, I spent that time getting ready, getting charts, and then I embarked on my trip. So the next video will be about my trip across the Pacific.